Prester sat in the middle of a meadow full of dandelions, idly watching a few lazy goats chew their cud beneath a shade tree and thinking about how his ancestors once lived out on the plains. A century ago, this region had been overrun by dairies, with thousands of acres of monoculture grasses chewed down to the roots by an endless horde of hungry cattle. Now the ruminants, like the grasslands, were smaller, and year after year abandoned farmland retreated to make way for wilderness. The invention of artificial milk was to blame. Once biochemists figured out how to make the perfect cold glass of milk, the dairy's days were numbered. Milk made from soy that was chemically identical to the milk made by udders, mushroom leather with the same feel and durability as suede, and the vast vats full of cell cultures that grew to be perfectly marbled steaks had set cattle on the path towards extinction, though a few small herds were still maintained for the sake of their cultural significance. Prester's grandfather was the last member of his family to have seen cattle on their land when a small feral herd wandered in from the forest one afternoon. Now Prester kept goats, not for harvest, but as pets. Some chemists had figured out how to whip up feta in a test tube ages ago. Prester's world was a place where solutions for all of life's ills were found with engineering, biochemistry, psychology, and physics. People were harder to solve than how to feed the planet, but every day newer and better algorithms tackled that problem too. Just that morning, in his messages, Prester learned some computer software somewhere had found 3 women who would all be his perfect soulmate, and he was completely certain that if he were to meet one of them, the AI would be proven right. Thanks to ubiquitous sensors and constant monitoring of his stress and arousal levels, the algorithms had all the information necessary to know all his likes and dislikes, wants and needs, and it could provide for just about all of them at a moment's notice. As a fleeting thought that he wouldn't mind a smoke crossed his mind, a small delivery drone dropped a fresh juice pack at his feet, then sped away to perform some other task. Way out here in the boonies, the drone would have taken at least 20 minutes to reach him. Before he was aware of it himself, some chemical sniffer had detected the physiological receptors that would trigger his nicotine urge revving up and had automatically requested fresh nicotine liquid be delivered. Prester wondered at how people managed to get through the day back when lung cancer still existed or small personal things cost money. Production of goods like nicotine or milk, whatever could be easily automated or made from genetically engineered yeast or produced in vast quantities with chemical reactions, that was simply handed out for free to the masses. Even the psychologists, civil engineers, biologists, astronomers, and other various scientists that form the core of the technate used algorithms with little human intervention to do most of their work. Almost every other task was made redundant by a perfect, rational, efficiency-oriented economy. Apart from the scientific elite, there were 2 other classes, though the concept of class made less sense in a post-scarcity society. Most people chose to pass the time on games. Thanks to gamification techniques and mind-machine interfaces, such folks could spend their days lost in virtual reality, while a small part of the brain helped solve difficult math formulas in the background. The second group were artists, artisans, performers, and musicians that saw their employment as both play and service. They engaged in singing, dancing, chanting, preaching, painting, reciting, cooking, and other such tasks for the sheer joy of it and the chance to improve the lives of others around them. Prester counted himself among them. As a historian, he found a bit of art and writing ability helped in his lectures. One of the women from his morning messages was a dancer. Maybe he would request a meeting after all. Some new obscure data from his biometrics was picked up by an algorithm, and correctly predicting his decision, a new message appeared in his feed. It listed 3 restaurants she was sure to enjoy and what clothes she would find most appealing. Modern technocracy was first named in 1919 when engineer William Henry Smith coined the term to describe a system of government in which the rule of the people is made effective through the agency of their servants, the scientists and engineers. Technocracy seeks to replace political whimsy with scientific reasoning. Though the rulers of a technate do not themselves necessarily have to be scientists, their decision-making will be based on the scientific method, and social problems will be resolved with social engineering backed up by data. Where traditional politicians would argue for the morality of their ideology based largely on their innate biases, a technocrat seeks out solutions through experimentation and statistical analysis, typically through the application of technology, the unification of the biological sciences with sociology and physics. For the technocrat, the ideal ruler sees government as an engineering problem in need of a solution. There's no room for logical fallacies in such a government. Chauvinism, racism, tribalism, and nationalism are inherent biases which a technocrat must willfully reject. Under a technocracy, technological advancement and scientific discovery are the sole source of authority, and the right to form laws and enact government policies can only be legitimized through scientific consensus building. Typically, in fiction, technocracy is equated with meritocracy and oligarchy. A small technical elite forms the ruling bureaucracy, and the leadership positions are filled by those experts most qualified for such key positions. The Secretary of Agriculture, for example, might also be a renowned agricultural scientist. Someone with a background in agricultural biotechnology or horticulture would be a qualified candidate for the position. But such a system of government isn't required to satisfy the basic tenets of technocracy. One can imagine a technocracy where leaders are democratically elected by a population that values each candidate's academic achievements over their other attributes as a form of non-oligarchic technocracy. Under the broad interpretation of a government in which authority is vested in technologists and scientists, most modern post-industrial governments are a form of technocracy, even if the authority given to scientists and other experts is not codified into law but upheld by social norms. Another aspect of technocracy in science fiction and in political philosophy is an association of the movement with energy economics. The idea is that the pricing of goods and services should not be based on the perceived value of such goods and services, but on the actual physical energy needs required to obtain such resources. Such a system, it is hoped, would allow the market to be governed as a system with inputs and outputs, eliminating the influence of logical fallacies like mass hysteria on the market. Other economic models proposed by technocracy advocates include thermoeconomics, in which the laws of thermodynamics govern the cost of goods. For example, making this toy produced this many kilojoules of waste heat, so it costs this much in waste heat unit currency. And ecological economics, in which natural resources represent finite and valuable assets whose preservation drives the economy, an attempt to merge the science of ecology with economics. One final form of technate to consider even has aspects of theocracy, one in which algorithms supersede humanity as the primary decision makers. Such a system would involve the rise of AI systems that, through a combination of evolutionary algorithms and access to vast swaths of personal data, become the ruling paradigm of our civilization. Under such a system, humans lose agency and essentially come to blindly rely on and worship big data, in effect a form of fundamentalism, while at the same time rationality and logic would drive all decision-making processes at the top, satisfying the conditions needed to be considered a technocracy.